and welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. With me today, as always, is the beautiful and lovely Sherry Swalwell. How are you today, Sherry? How are things in your neck of the woods over there?
Oh, Kara, I am so excited. I have been excited all week thinking about taping this one and talking about our topic today. I think I've been excited for like the last 2 months. And I think it's because I love to talk to people about coffee. I love to talk to people about books. I love to talk about all of those kind of things. And while coffee is not our main topic, those are just two of the things I love to talk about. We are going to be talking about books today as well as some other things. And I cannot wait. I just cannot wait. And it doesn't even have to be like today is focused on your favorite picks, the things that you like. So see, the books don't even have to be my favorites. I just enjoy listening and finding new books to read. And maybe we've read some of the same books, which I know we have because I got to see the list. So I'm super excited. But before we get into any of that, I have to share, I read a devotional this week, and it was talking about our verse, the podcast verse, John 16:33. Be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. And it was talking about 3 different occasions that Jesus called his disciples to be of good cheer. The first one was because our sins have been forgiven and forgotten in Christ. So because we are saved, that's the first reason why we should be cheerful. The second reason we should be cheerful is because we're not fighting for victory, but from the vantage point of already being victorious. Mm-hmm. Where he talks about in the verse, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. He has already overcome, which means we have already overcome. So we've already been victorious. So that's the second reason. And the third reason to be of good cheer is because Jesus is with us no matter what life throws at us. And don't we all need that reminder every once in a while, or like every other second or every other minute? I know I do. So
what is anything less than a second? Because that's me, but go ahead.
So when I read that, I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to share that with Kara and with our listeners, because it just puts into words even better than what I've been saying, our verse of John 16:33, being of good cheer. So see, even Jesus says, be of good cheer, and here's the reason why. So I just wanted to share that this morning.
Yes, and with so many recent events happening in our world today, and with things like, oh my goodness, with like inflation and gas prices and food prices and just some of the tragedies that have been going on in the past several months or over the past couple of months, it's just always good to remember what you said. And it's hard to think, why should I be of good cheer? It's like all these things are happening, but we are told to. And like Sherry just reminded us, that is why we are to be of good cheer. Because even though it seems like, we may be down and out, or like everything going around us we still need to be of good cheer. And we have to also remember in the book of Philippians, where it talks about to think on those things that are lovely, that are of good report, that is of, and is that Philippians 4:6 or 4:9, Sherry? Do you know?
I will figure that out in just one second. I love that verse, by the way, or that
yes.
verses, because it is Philippians 4:8 and 9. Finally,
8 and 9.
Whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. I love those 2 verses.
If there's anything praiseworthy, if there's anything of good report, if there's anything lovely, then you meditate on those things. And I think that it's just so awesome for like right now. And of course we have to deal with our pocketbooks, and everything else, So it's not like you're ignoring reality. And when we hear of tragic situations, it's not like we're ignoring them, or whatever, and saying, our hearts aren't going out to that. Just because we're not talking about it, just because we're not, depressed about it or anything like that, doesn't mean you're detached from it. from the situation, from the reality, or from what's going on. It just means that we are doing what we are scripturally called to do, and that's focusing on the things that are good, that are noble, that are lovely, that are praiseworthy. And why does God want us to do that? Because stressing over those things and being depressed over those things are not good for our health. It's not good for our mental health. It's not good for our emotional health. And it's just not good for us. And besides, those situations have already happened. The sadness of it has already happened. The tragicity of it, I think I just made up a word, just already happened. It's in God's hands. It's over. God is in control of that whole entire situation and what has happened in those things. And even though we may still be grieving over it, doesn't mean that we can't do what we're commanded to do. And that's focus on the things that are noble, on the things that are lovely, and the things that are praiseworthy. We are called to do those things. And I don't think we should be guilty doing those things. Do you, Sherry?
No, absolutely not. And just because we're following that command does not mean, like you said, that we're not praying heavily for recovery or praying for the emotional well-being of those that have been in tragedy. It doesn't mean that we're not taking action and helping. It doesn't mean that we're not putting hands and feet, because God commands us to do all those things too. But you're right. You can do those from the perspective of, I can still be of good cheer, because even though this battle has been lost, God has still won the war. The victory is still ours.
It is.
And it all goes back to that other verse, Romans 8:28. All things work together for good to those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. God does not say everything that happens is good. He says he can make good out of bad things. God doesn't create the bad things. God doesn't cause the bad things. That's sin. And that credit goes to the enemy. It does not go to God. God is the one that creates good. God is the one that comforts. God is the one that never leaves or forsakes us. God is the one who is right there with us always. So on a lighter note, I have an example of how to be of good cheer when you were talking about high gas prices, high food prices, et cetera, et cetera. So I was at the store yesterday with our youngest, and we were grocery shopping, and we were flying through the shelves. And I can't remember now. It was just yesterday, but I can't remember now exactly what it was that I wanted. There was, Velveeta cheese, like silly. I wanted Velveeta cheese because I love making grilled cheese sandwiches. And they didn't have any. And so in my head, yes, there was a moment of disappointment. I don't have my Velveeta cheese, but in my head, I'm going, I wonder if God's going to use this food shortage to remind everybody healthy portion control, eating healthier food.
Talk about godly perspective, right?
I know. And I almost started to laugh at myself. I almost started to chuckle. I'm like, okay, I can find good even in this. Maybe God is using this just like, so if a food shortage does happen, then is God going to use that to remind us? Because, Kara, like the portions of today are not like the proportions of our childhood. Like McDonald's drinks way back when and coffee cups way back when were normal size. Now we're like the jumbo jet. And so maybe God's going to use that to remind us, hey, you know what? You only need 8 ounces or 16 ounces. You don't need 54, 64, 72. So I don't know. That's just a small, I was laughing about that as I was at the store. I'm going, well, one less thing I have to buy, so I'll stay within budget, and one less thing that I'll be eating, so less pieces on my way.
I was just in that same vein. I was just talking about that with a relative because we were talking about, the recent baby formula shortage, and everything. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe this is just a way of God just reminding everyone that he has given women everything they need to feed their babies. Back in biblical times, there was no baby formula.
Right.
Thousands and thousands of years ago. Heck, wait a minute. Hundreds of years ago, right? Like there was no baby formula. I'm not exactly sure when the baby formula came out. I do think it was in the 19th century though. So, for thousands of years, there was no baby formula, but women were still able to feed their babies.
And the women who couldn't do it naturally, who couldn't do it themselves, there were alternatives, and not just wet nurses, but there were alternatives with like goat's milk, and I think I saw a formula on Facebook, not a formula, but like an ingredient formula thing of like evaporated milk and something else and something else. So yes, there are different ways that people can do it besides using baby formula, and it doesn't. That doesn't condemn people who legitimately can't breastfeed, because there are alternatives for them as well.
Oh, it's definitely not condemning, but it is saying God has supplied everything you need to feed your child, whether it be through, like you say, back in the day, it was like they used a lot of wet nursing for those who couldn't just naturally, feed their child and everything else. And so, but now you even have more resources, like you said, goat's milk, where you don't actually have to go out and milk the goat. Right, you can buy it now.
Right,
is what I'm saying. Things are like it's just just a tad bit easier, but it's one of those things that brings us all the way back to just going back to the nitty gritty of that God has pretty much given us what we need to survive. Let's say there is no food shortage. That there's a massive food shortage. As long as we still have dirt in the ground, we should be able to plant something. And things like that. So there weren't always grocery stores either. And to me, it's like all of that just reminding us to go back to the way God originally intended and or designed things, and or embracing those things naturally that can help us do things, right? We're so conditioned to just going to the store and getting our food. But our great-grandparents weren't. They would go in the backyard and pull it up. Or dig it up, or they would go to their neighbors to get their meat, and things like that. And honestly, Sherry, I'm thinking if we were to go back to that module where you depended on your neighbors more than just the grocery store, I just think it would be so much better for community. Don't you think?
That is exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, wouldn't it be the icing on the cake for God to use something like this, which, again, he didn't cause, but something like this, to bring and to rebuild that sense of community that our world just desperately needs right now.
Yes, exactly. Where the world just exactly needs right now. It's like, hey, I can give you dairy, I can give you milk, I can give you cheese. Can you give me meat?
Yeah,
exactly. And that whole sense of community and just working together, as a family and everything, because people go to grocery stores or, we're all going to starve. No, as children, those who are children of God, one, you should know better than that for several reasons. There's promises about that in the Bible, especially when he talks about, if I take care of the birds of the air, do you not think I'm going to take care of you?
Right? Exactly.
So that's just one of them, that promises that God is always going to be there to supply our needs. And sometimes we just have to change our perspective on what our needs are. Okay, now just say it will supply all of our wants, right? That's the difference.
Right.
Okay, but if we need nurturing to sustain life, God's going to give us that. Right? Now, he may not give us our favorite cookies, okay? Because last I checked, you can't grow cookies naturally, but maybe someone out there knows how, right? Or something like that. But you can grow the ingredients naturally, right? Or someone may be able to grow the ingredients naturally. So I say all of this to say it's, when the world is constantly trying to fill you with fear and panic, there's no, your babies are going to starve, you're going to starve, and everything else. There's no baby formula, there's no food in a grocery store and everything like that. If you're a child of God, you don't need to panic, because like Sherry emphasized, he does not cause this, but for those who follow the Lord God Almighty, he uses it. He can use it to turn it around for your good and for your glory. And chances are, with the nurturing and food that he supplies naturally or that may come your way, we may end up all being healthier in the long run.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, anyway, it's just one of those things that um, where we have to look at the good report, the praiseworthy, and things like that, and just focus on them. Still pray about the things that's going on in the world, and that God can and that God will intervene where He sees fit. And at the same time, it's like we don't have to be so down and out, depressed, hiding under the covers about it. Because God promises us that we're going to be okay, that He's going to give us and our children and all of those who believe in Him everything that they need. So anyway, I just wanted to, I don't even know how we got on that part, Sherry.
But well, it all kind of goes back to we are the ones that He calls to step up, to be the hands and feet of Him, and to do it in a way that isn't doom and gloom, but in a way that shares His hope, His love, His peace, and His joy. I mean, if we're not doing it in His way, and not to say, like you said, that we can't hurt. Oh my goodness, crying alongside somebody is just effective. But offering that hope along with the tears.
Mm-hmm. Offering that hope along with the tears, and that's and a helping hand when you can. Where you can.
Right. Right.
With the tears. But on a personal level, you can't let it get you to the point to where you're just like paralyzed. Like you can't do anything. You don't want it to get to that point.
Right. You have to spend that time with Him first to let Him fill you up so that you can then
there you go.
Yep.
There you go. That's exactly it. Seek the kingdom of God first. Seek God first, and just talk to Him about it. Lay out all your grievances and everything else. I mean, trust me, God can handle it. If He could handle Jeremiah's lamentations, that He can handle our cries and our moans and our groans, because our spirits and our emotions hurt for the things that's going on. But we are to grieve and we are to pray, but we are not to let it infect us, if that's the right word, right? We can't let it infect our mind, our body, our spirits, and our souls, to where we're so paralyzed by it that we can't do anything by it. That's not what we're supposed to do. And God doesn't want us like that. That's why He said, think on those things that are of good report, of good cheer, that are praiseworthy. Because when we think on those things, we're reminded of just how good God is, and that it's just like that song that we used to sing in children's church many, many years ago. He has the whole world in His hands.
Absolutely.
The whole world, not just the United States, not just Canada, not just Asia, not just Africa, the entire world in His hands. Nothing that has happened has taken God by surprise. Nothing. And He has it in His hands. And when we continually think about those things that are praiseworthy and are of good report, then that puts us in that mindset, in that God perspective of He's got all this under control. I don't need to be depressed. I don't need to be down. I don't need to be out, because God has all of this under control. And as Sherry mentioned earlier, what we're going to be talking about today isn't necessarily control. We're going to be talking about things that we enjoy. So for this episode, we will be talking about some of my favorite things, and then in next week's episode, we'll be talking about Sherry's favorite things. And for some of you who are listening and go, oh my goodness, that was a very long introduction, welcome to the Trail Podcast. So welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. And again, a great thank you to all of our listeners who continue to share the podcast and everything on social media. For those of you who may not be aware, we're on all major podcasting and social media platforms. And so if you want to listen to us, just go to your favorite podcast platform. Let me try to say that again. Podcast platform. And just look for Cheer Up Podcast, the full phrase, Cheer Up Podcast. Download, subscribe, and listen. And we welcome you, and we thank you for joining us. We just welcome all new members. And we also have a private Facebook group. We also have a Facebook group that is not private. It is an open Facebook group. And so if you ever want to join that, there's type in Cheer Up Podcast in Facebook, and you should be able to see us under groups. And as soon as we see the invite, we'll just go ahead and accept you in. So, and if you ever want to send us a private message, you can do that at cheeruppodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's cheeruppodcast@gmail.com. Have I forgotten anything else, Sherry?
No, I think you got it all.
I think we got it also. Today, we're going to be talking about some of my favorite things. And I am going to, you guys know, Sherry and I both love books. Not only did we start loving books at a very early age, but we're also writers and things like that. We've shared, and you probably have heard, and we'll hear some more this summer on some of our favorite authors and some of our favorite books. And so a lot of them will be joining us this summer. And along those lines, and last summer, we shared some of my favorite fiction picks, but I don't think I shared any of my favorite nonfiction picks at the time. But even if I did, I have some I want to add. Let me put it that way. So I'm not going to mention any, not too many fiction picks this while, but of course, if you guys haven't purchased any of Sherry Swalwell's devotionals and her nonfiction stuff, then please go and do it now. You can get it on Amazon. Just type in Sherry Swalwell, and you'll see all of the books in there that she has to offer, all the devotionals as well that she has to offer. So, of course, all of her stuff is under my favorite things. And another one I want to mention is, for those of you who have listened to the podcast since the beginning, one of my favorite Bible translations is the King James Version of the Bible. And my a very close second version of the Bible that I love is called the Complete Jewish Bible. And it's the Complete Jewish Bible, also kind of referred to as CJB, and it's a translation by David H. Stern, and it's a comprehensive introduction and a pronouncing explanatory glossary. It has a reverse glossary, and it has maps to aid in Bible standing. And the Complete Jewish Bible shows God, Genesis to Revelation, is a unified Jewish book meant for everyone, Jew and non-Jew alike. What I love about this book is that it follows the Hebrew Bible order of the Tanakh, and the order of which in the Complete Jewish Bible, they say Yeshua for Jesus was familiar. And it helps just kind of reconnect Christians with their Jewish roots and the Jewish people. And it's just one of my favorite things. I just wanted to just mention that the Complete Jewish Bible, it is really just so chock full of information and everything else. And you get to see like the different, it gives you like the Tanakh, which is like the Old Testament version of it. And it gives you and I am going to really mess this up, but let me just spell it. Okay. They pronounce the New Testament as Brit Hadashah, and I apologize to any of my Jewish listeners, because I'm pretty sure I probably did not say that correctly, but it is spelled it's spelled with a capital B apostrophe RIT. Next word, Hadashah, and that's spelled HADASH. AH. That is what their version of the New Testament. And then we have the Tanakh, the TANAKH, which is what they call the Old Testament. But it's the English translation of the Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah. So have you you're familiar with the Complete Jewish Bible, aren't you, Sherry?
Only through you. And as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm writing all this stuff down. So God has really been speaking to me lately about Jewish customs, the Jewish traditions. And sitting here listening to you, I don't know, I think I'm going to be going and buying myself one of these Bibles.
Yeah, it is one of my favorites. I use that in conjunction with the King James Version of the Bible, simply because it gives you kind of like they break it down just a little bit more. And so for those of you who are like, oh, the King James Version just kind of, it's so Englishy, the these and the thous, and things like that. Then the complete Jewish Bible, if you kind of use them hand in hand, it just gives you just another deeper revelation of it. And so, again, it's the Jewish Bible in English translation, if that makes sense. So so you don't need to read Hebrew in order to enjoy the complete Jewish Bible, because David H. Stern has translated it into English for people like you and I who aren't fluent and don't know and can't read Hebrew. So it's really, really a great resource. I cannot say enough about it. And that is one of my favorite Bibles. My third favorite Bible that is my go-to, and this has become a recent favorite, and a recent and not so recent favorite, and that is the Amplified Version of the Bible. I have always loved it. I kind of cut my teeth on it once I really started studying the Bible many, many, many years ago. But they also have one now called the AMPC, the Classic Amplified Bible, and that is like the third version that I really love, and they really break down a lot of the words and everything just for easier understanding and meaning. And it's great for like if you're trying to do a Bible study and everything, but you may not have the hour to pull out your concordance and your Bible dictionaries and your commentaries and things like that, because they do all the work there for you in each verse. So it's really, really an awesome version of the Bible, the AMPC version of the Bible. Are you familiar with the Amplified Bible at all, Sherry?
Yes, I don't. That's not one of the versions that I read regularly. I think my favorite version of the Bible is the Life Application Bible. It's New International Version, but I love the extras that it has in there. It just kind of takes my Bible study to a whole new level. It gives me more understanding of what I'm reading. But yeah, I'm not one who has, well, I mean, I guess I have favorites for myself, but I'm very open to discovering new ones. When people are like, oh, I love this one, or oh, I love that one, I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I'll check it out. So yeah, I love hearing things like that. My mom started in with the Passion version, and she actually
I've heard a lot about that one. Yeah.
Yep. So she sent me a copy of that. Gave me a copy of that Bible, and so I've been using that every once in a while, along with my Life Application Bible. I guess it's Life Application Study Bible. But then, like when you and I are together on the podcast, I love using my New King James Version. So I love how different versions have different phrases. And
yes,
yeah, I'm very open to lots of different versions.
Yes, I am too. And like I said, my favorite and my go-to is always going to be the King James Version, and everything. And so it's like, but sometimes, when you're doing Bible study, or you're like, or you just want to get more into like the Tanakh or the Brit Hadashah version of it, the Jewish version of it, or if you just need it just a little bit more broken down for you, like an amplified version, I recommend, those are my top 3 recommendations, for the Bible. And one of my favorite devotions of all time, and this is usually one of my go-tos of it. And I know a lot of people are going to be thinking, Kara, really? What is with you? But I don't know why his devotions speak so much to me, but it is the one that has been a bestseller for, like, I don't know, at least maybe the past 100 years. Don't quote me on that. But it's My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers. And again, it's called My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers. And It is, just to give you guys an example. Now, this is not this was written many years ago, decades ago, and everything else. And so the language is a little bit different, and everything. So, but if you're looking for a good, solid devotional, I can't recommend My Almost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers enough. And to just give you an example of today's one, it's called Think as Jesus Taught. And it's talking about praying without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. 1 Thessalonians 5:17. And here he says, we think rightly or wrongly about prayer according to the conception we have in our minds of prayer. If we think of prayer as the breath in our lungs and the blood from our hearts, we think rightly. The blood flows ceaselessly, and breathing continues ceaselessly. We are not conscious of it, but it is always going on. We are not always conscious of Jesus keeping us in perfect joint with God, but if we are obeying Him, He always is. Prayer is not an exercise. It is the life. Beware of anything that stops ejaculatory prayer. Pray without ceasing. Keep the childlike habit of ejaculatory prayer in your heart to God all the time. Jesus never mentioned unanswered prayer. He had the boundless certainty that prayer is always answered. Have we, by the Spirit, the unspeakable certainty that Jesus had about prayer, or do we think of the times when God does not seem to have answered prayer? Everyone that asketh receiveth. We say, but. But in reality, God answers prayer in the best way, not sometimes, but every time. Although the immediate manifestation of the answer in the domain in which we want it may not always follow. Do we expect God to answer prayer? The danger with us is that we want to water down the things that Jesus says and make them mean something in accordance with common sense. If it were only common sense, it was not worthwhile for Him to say it. The things Jesus says about prayer are supernatural revelations. And that just gives you an example of the way that this particular devotional is written. Again, I wish I would have looked up exactly when, Oswald Chambers wrote this, but it is not new. And you can kind of tell by the language that this was written, maybe over a century ago. Are you familiar with My Almost for His Highest, Sherry?
I am. A lot of my friends reference him a lot. And different devotions that I read either online or books reference him a lot. I have a lot of respect for Oswald Chambers. And the devotional that you just read from him, it reminds me of a book that I just read called Breath as Prayer. And it's talking about how especially when you're anxious, something's really troubling you. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier today. You breathe in part of the prayer and you breathe out the rest of the prayer. And so, for instance, I love to, if I'm going to bed at night and I'm anxious, or if my mind won't stop racing, I will choose to speak Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Jireh back to God. That's just kind of my thing with him. And it's just a reminder to me that He's my healer and He's my provider. He's my healer, He's my provider. And sometimes I'll throw in Jehovah Shalom. He's also my peace, as I calm down and get ready to go to sleep. And so I didn't even know that I was doing the breath as prayer until I read the book. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that 3 nights ago. And so as you breathe in Jehovah Rapha, as you breathe out Jehovah Jireh, and I can't do it as I'm breathing because you're supposed to do it quietly, but you're just supposed to say that the first phrase as you breathe in and the last phrase as you breathe out. And what you just read from Oswald Chambers just reminded me of that over 100 years ago, all of these things are not new. They're just reminders of how to center ourselves back on God, focus back on God, keep the focus on God, keep trusting Him, keep believing Him, like you said, nothing is new. God is not surprised by anything that is happening in this world today, anything that's happening in our own lives today, in our families, in our jobs, in our communities. None of it is new. And all of these, I truly believe that all of these authors are God anointed, God inspired to continue to draw us back to the truth that God has got us.
Oh, absolutely. It all draws us back to the truth. And like you said, none of it is new. It's just it's bringing it back, more closer to our understanding. So Oswald Chambers died in 1917. So this was written either in the mid to probably the late 1800s. Okay, and yet it still sells. I think the latest number I saw is like 15 million in print and reprints and everything else. So yeah, this was probably, and I think he wrote this, before his, I want to say shortly before his death, but I don't think that's the case. I'm trying to remember his entire story. So, but anyway, like I said, he died in 1917. He was born in 1874. So it was written during that time, and you would think that people would be like, oh my goodness, my utmost for his highest, that was written so long ago, it's not relevant to today. And I just challenge you to, and the great thing about his devotionals, actually, and especially by it being so old, so to speak, is that most of the times you can find it for free.
Right.
Most of the
right.
time, yeah, because I think after so many years, stuff becomes free in public domain. You know what I mean? So, because I really doubt, quote unquote, his publishers are still in existence.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, and so most of it is just completely free now. It's public domain type of thing, and everything else. So you can usually find a version of it online, and it's called My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Oswald Chambers, and it is, like I said, over 15 million sold. So again, it's even all these years later, it's still one of those, and the one I have here is like the classic edition and everything else. But like you said, Sherry, so many people has referenced it like in one way or another and everything else. And so it's just one of those that is quickly one of my favorites and has been a favorite of mine for all time. And I just can't say enough about it. And I'm kind of, as I'm talking, I'm kind of looking for some information I wanted to give our listeners as well. About My Almost for Its Highest. I know I can't say newer versions because that's not correct. But I know it was a new, I can't call it a newer version. But I was looking for the right word for it that I know that's out there.
I was going to say revised, but I don't think that's right either.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So the book has been in print for over 75 years. And so, like I said, it's the classic edition, and Sherry has the closest word to it, revised. I know there's some like revised ones, and and things like that out there. But anyway, just grab your copy. Chances are, I doubt you pay more than $3.99 for it. Even if you get one of the revised copies of it or whatnot. So. And everything else. And if I'm trying to remember the story correctly, I think he had written these devotions, Oswald Chambers did, and then I believe he died and or was killed. But I think he had kind of written them just kind of like maybe for him and for his family or whatnot. But it was after his death, I believe, that his wife had them all printed up and printed together, and she had presented them, I think, to like his friends and family members or something like that. And it just kind of gained popularity from there. So I kind of think that's kind of how that happened. I don't think he had it published while he was alive. I think it was his wife that did it after his death.
Wow.
It's kind of a way to just say, hey, this is what he was up to, type of thing, and be blessed, and everything else, by that. So, but anyway, My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers. I'm going to mention two books by one of my favorite nonfiction authors and devotional writers as well, Joyce Meyer. The first one is called Do It Afraid, and it's for embracing courage in the face of fear. If you have ever struggled with fear, or anxiety or anything of that nature, I highly recommend Do It Afraid. That's the title of the book, Do It Afraid, by Joyce Meyer. And in there, she talks about how fear is said to be false evidence appearing real, the acronym FEAR, and how courage is not the absence of fear, but it is moving forward in the presence of fear. So it's being fearful and doing it anyway. And she talks about how so many people spend their entire lives reacting to situations in ways that prevent them from being the people they truly want to be, because they never realize that their lives feel empty because they have allowed fear to dictate their decisions. And that is pretty much what Do It Afraid by Joyce Meyer is about. And it's saying, I know I'm afraid. I'm scared to do this. I don't even know how I can do this. I don't even know if I'm capable to do this, let alone qualified to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that's a book. And so if you've ever struggled with fear, even debilitating fear of some kind, it's a very good book for that. And she has really awesome testimonies of people in various situations of all types of fear, whether it's from something mild or for something huge, and they give testimonies about what started the fear, what triggered the fear, and things like that. But then they talk about how something happened to where they just were faced with opportunity to face the fear head on, or run away from it. And they testify about, she shared their testimonies in the book about how the miraculous things and the victorious things that happened when they decided to walk through it. So it's really an awesome, awesome book if you are struggling with fear, anxiety, or anything like that. And the second book by her is actually a little on a lighter side of the spectrum, and it is called Eat the Cookie, Buy the Shoes. Again, that's called Eat the Cookie, Buy the Shoes. And that's the second book by Joyce Meyer that I want to recommend. And it just talks about giving yourself permission to lighten up. That's all it means, just giving yourselves permission to lighten up. And it's really it's more designed for people who struggle with guilt of some kind, like mostly self-condemnation guilt type of thing. And so we punish ourselves by not allowing ourselves to be happy in certain situations like that. But it also talks about other situations, but it's kind of focused on that. And she talks about how we must remember that we are not built for guilt, and we should deal with it aggressively any time we experience it. And the best gift you can give your family and the world is a healthy you. And you cannot be healthy without celebration being a regular part of your life. You can change the entire atmosphere in your home simply by giving yourself permission to lighten up. Eat the Cookie and Buy the Shoes. And in there she talks about the funny title, Eat the Cookie and Buy the Shoes, and why it's titled that. But it's really about, giving yourself permission to lighten up and celebrate the life that God has given you. So that is the second one that I want to recommend by Joyce Meyer. So what do you think of those two, Sherry?
Well, I had seen that title and I hadn't gone out to read it, but now I'm going to, because that is a theme that God has been dealing with me with for quite a while, but especially lately he's been reminding me that, life is not about getting up every day and tackling your responsibilities. Yes, you have responsibilities and I will get them done. I'm not advocating for, dropping everything and eat, drink, and be merry. But lately my phrase has been, I work to live, not live to work. And it's that mindset of enjoying the little things, the things that don't even cost any money, but just the little things in life. And so now I'm really excited to read her book because God has already been talking to me about that. So I can't wait to see what he wants to share with me from her work.
Absolutely. And it's so awesome because I think a lot of times we Oh, I can't say take life for granted, right? But because I don't think that's appropriate. But I don't think we enjoy it as much as God intended us to. Like, it's
And
miraculous.
somebody said to me, which I just heard a great song on the radio called Good Mood, and it talks about how God has a sense of humor and how God isn't mad at you and how God loves you, and he loves to laugh. And I really do think that God has an amazing sense of humor and that he wants us to find joy in our life as much as we want to.
Oh, absolutely. How many times is the word joy and peace in the scriptures?
Exactly.
And so it is something in our life that we just need to be comfortable with and embrace and embrace and enjoy. And it is just, and so anyway, I just wanted to share those two books because one, she deals with a serious topic, and then one, she deals with a lighter topic. And it's just basically, just lighten up, And not only that, it's very healthy for people to lighten up. It really is. If we go out stressed and tense all the time, we're just inviting health issues into our life. There's no doubt about it. It's not that just me saying that. Scientists have said it. Medical doctors have said it, and everything else. So God knew what he was doing when he prescribed. Of course he did. He created us. When he's like, don't focus on those bad things. Focus on these things because he has things for us to do. And we can only be really effective in them when we're healthy. Mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, physically healthy. All those other things drain us and keep us tense and down and out. We can't do anything because we're sick or we're ill or we're dealing with one type of infirmity or another. And that's kind of limiting the potential of like the things that we could do for God, as well as fear. Fear does the same thing. And then she talks about that and, just do it afraid. So it's one of those things on being healthy in all of those areas of our life so that we can do whatever God has planned for us to do and be able to do it without feeling weak afterwards or needing medical attention, afterwards because we've been dealing with so much stress in our life. So when he prescribes joy and peace in our life and to focus on those things, it's ultimately for our good, for our health. It's like the Ten Commandments. It's there to protect us. It's not there because he wants us to ignore everything that's going on. And there's just two more books I want to mention. One I'm just going to mention briefly. But if you love reading biographies, autobiographies, I can't recommend Shackled by Miriam Ibrahim enough. And because of the topic it deals with, I don't want to go into details about it now, but a lot of you may be familiar with her story. But again, it's Miriam Ibrahim, and it's called Shackled. And correct me if I'm wrong in the spelling of this, Sherry, but her first name is Mariam.
Correct. Yep.
And it's Ibrahim, Ibrahim, Shackled. And it deals with a very tough and sensitive subject. And again, that's why I'm hesitant to talk more about it on here. But if you guys just want to Google it real quick and look it up, and if you want to read the book and just see the amazing things that God can do when you refuse to give in to immense pressure, to immense torture, then you need to read that book. The last one that I'm going to mention is a book called The 15%. And it talks about overcoming hardships and achieving lasting success. And again, it's called The 15%. It's by Terry Giles, Terry. His last name is spelled Giles, and it's a foreword by Dr. Ben Carson. And I never would have heard of this guy or this book if it wasn't recommended by Dr. Ben Carson, because on like sites like BookBub or whatever, he's one of my authors that I follow, and I saw that he had recommended this book, and because I hold Dr. Ben Carson in high esteem. I'm like, oh, well, if he recommends this book, then, maybe something worth reading. And I am so glad that I picked it up because he's known Terry Giles for a while, I believe since they were in high school. And if any of you are familiar with Dr. Ben Carson's story, you know that he came from poverty, worse than poverty type of situation, and was able to become one of the most successful neurosurgeons in the world. And Terry Giles came from equally horrific. Dr. Ben Carson's situations just wasn't horrific. It was just poverty, stricken in the times that he was growing up in. With Terry Giles, though, his was more horrific in nature, and the things that he had to deal with in a young child and everything else. Yet he became this very successful person, and he realized when he was a lawyer, and he kind of realized that one time when he was interviewing people for a deposition about something horrible that had happened to them when they were entrusted with someone in their care who they should have trusted. And he realized that about 15% of them, even though it had happened like 20 years ago, were doing well with their life. They had moved on. They had dealt with it mentally, physically, emotionally, and everything else. And it was just like a blip on the screen in their life. But they were happy. They were happily married. They had great kids. They had jobs that they loved. But then he was saying like the other 85% had such a hard time moving on from what had happened to them as children that even reliving it in a deposition triggered so many emotions for them. And one or two of them, I think, committed suicide, just reliving what had happened for this court case. And he was saying, and then he said it's like 85% that just could not move on from what had happened to them like decades prior. And so this book is focused on those 15% that overcome hardships and they achieve lasting success, not just financial success, but emotional, mental success in things in their life, and how it's just. And then he met with some psychologists, psychoanalysts, and everything else, and I interviewed a whole bunch of people from various tragic situations, and it just always seemed like there's that 15% that's able to have a great life in various ways, no matter what had happened to them, and they didn't let it dictate the way they lived, but that there was 85% that did. And their lives weren't necessarily so great, or they weren't able to overcome those tragedies. And it really affected the way that they lived. They couldn't stay married. They had multiple divorces. They were disconnected from their children and or estranged and things like that. But this book focuses on the 15%, those and how to overcome hardships and achieve lasting success. It is a USA Today bestseller, and again, I recommend it, especially if you find yourself in either one of those categories, 85% or the 15%. Overcoming hardships and achieving lasting success is something that you want to read. And again, the title of the book is The 15% by Terry Giles. Had you heard of this book, Sherry?
Only through you, but I'll tell you what, I have that on my to-be-read pile as well because it sounds so good. I have loved the nonfiction books that you have shared with us today. The only one that I have read that you talked about, I'm just trying to think again. Yeah, the only one that I've read is the Shackled one, which I agree with you. It is a must read. It's so powerful.
It is so powerful.
Yeah, that's rated R. So the topic is heavy and graphic.
So thank you. And that's why I don't want to talk about it. I didn't want to go into detail about it. I just want people to use their discretion. So I'm so glad you said that. Use that discretion, look it up, and see if it's for them. And I'm going to wrap this up really quick. I don't have any more books to recommend, but I do have some music albums. Please, listeners, if you have not purchased Believe for It by CeCe Winans, please go and do so now. Okay. It's just definitely one of those albums you want to download to your favorite music listening platforms, and it's you're going to totally enjoy the album. Again, it's called Believe for It by CeCe Winans. Her name is spelled C-E-C-E, last name Winans, W-I-N-A-N-S. The second one is fairly new, and it's called Avalon Worship. Avalon Worship. And Avalon is spelled Avalon, and the title of the album is Worship. And it is one of my favorite Christian contemporary music groups. And what they have taken is some of the most recent worship songs that churches love, and contemporary Christian songs that a lot of Christians sing and use, over just all across the nation. And they just kind of put their little touch to it. So it's just them, and it's called Avalon Worship, and they take some of those very famous songs that a lot of Christians are familiar with, and they just made it, they sing them, and they place it on an album. And this one I simply cannot recommend enough, and it's called Milk and Honey by Crowder. Crowder, and it's called Milk and Honey. That's the name of that's the name of the album, and it's by Crowder. Oh my goodness! Put your praise shoes on, and while you're cleaning the house, or you're out running, while you're exercising, while you're gardening or cooking, or just sitting down in a chair, it doesn't matter, because you will be blessed upon blessed upon blessed by downloading that album or purchasing that album, a praise and worship album, Milk and Honey by Crowder. Okay, I'm done. Sherry, with those things. So have you listened to any of those albums?
No, but I did see Avalon Worship around, so now I'm going to. And I had the privilege of seeing Crowder in person. Oh my goodness, last fall. If you ever have the opportunity to go see Crowder in person, he is so funny. It all boils back to the whole Be of Good Cheer thing. He was telling us story upon story during COVID. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have to say this and then we'll wrap it up, I promise. But so he was talking about how during COVID and the shutdown, he was stuck at home. And so he says, I didn't even know, because he's gone all the time. His wife does everything at home. So he's like, I didn't even know when trash day was. He goes, and here I'm trying to help out around the house. And my wife's like, well, will you go take the trash out? He's like, sure, I can try. And I'm totally mastering the story. But anyway, the whole point of it was he kept failing at all of these husbandly duties because they had a routine and he wasn't part of it. Their routine was different when, he still was the husband and he still did the husband things. But he was being asked to do things that were out of his comfort zone and out of his routine. And he said, finally, he goes, I'm just a lot better at writing songs. I'll go into the garage. and Crowder, if you ever hear this and I got it totally wrong, please correct me. But it was hilarious. And you brought so much joy to that concert in the fall. And you made a lasting impression on me. So I highly, highly, highly recommend his songs. He's got amazing fast songs. He's got amazing slow songs.
Yes, worship. Yeah.
Stick with you. They just stick with you. So yeah, love seeing him in person. My family had seen him, or part of my family had seen him years ago. And so when I told them I had the opportunity, they're like, oh, you're going to have so much fun. And when I came home that night, I'm like, I had so much fun. You guys were spot on. He's amazing.
I know, right? And also, for those of you, if you have not seen gospel artist CeCe Winans in concert, you're also in for a treat. And I think she's touring around this time, too. So you may want to be able to check your listings as well for that. But I haven't had the pleasure of seeing Crowder in person. So, and he's been local. So that's not good, especially now, Sherry, that you're telling me I won't regret it. So that's a good thing.
Well, I would love to see CeCe Winans too. I know some of her backstory, and their family is incredible. So, yes, it would be such an honor to get to see her, and her voice. Oh, my goodness, her voice. And I don't have that album, but the one song from that album, it is so impactful, and it just stays with you. It's amazing.
Oh, are you talking about Believe for it, the title?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, everyone! If you can, just listen to that song. Go to YouTube and just listen to the song. Yeah. Believe for it. And I'm telling you, you'll want to get the whole album, but just listen to the song, Believe for it. And my goodness, if you're not pumped up after that, then you do need to buy the album regardless. So
Exactly.
It's just one of those things. So those are my favorite nonfiction and some of my favorite praise and worship albums that are out there. And I was going to get into like other things like favorite foods and everything else, but that just have to wait to another time because I completely went over time. So it's okay. So we're going to wrap this up. Sherry, anything else you wanted to add?
It has just been so much fun. Like I said, I woke up this morning excited that we were going to get to do this, and it blew it out of the water. Like the expectations were met and achieved and then some. So as we spoke about, or as we started with the podcast this morning, there are so many reasons why God commands us to cheer up, to be of good cheer. It doesn't mean to ignore the hardships that's going on in life. It doesn't mean that God doesn't want us to grieve. He doesn't want us to ignore the pain. He wants us to bring him the pain so that he can bring hope and healing into the situation. He didn't cause it. He's not to blame. We don't need to run from him. We need to run to him and give it all to him. He has big shoulders. He can handle all of our emotions. He created our emotions. He knew each and every one of us personally when he created us. So he knows if you have a hot temper. He knows if you weep at commercials. He knows if you clam up and build walls. He knows all of that. And he just wants to be there to listen and to comfort. And then we are instructed, once we've received the comfort from Jesus, from our Heavenly Father, to then go and share that comfort with others, because we're not the only ones who are hurting nowadays. And it seems like with all that's going on in the world, so many more people are hurting than are not. And God wants us to be that light to other people. He says in John 16:33, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." If you need prayer or you need encouragement, if you would like someone to come alongside you as you're dealing with issues in your life, head over to the Cheer Up Podcast at gmail.com, and we would love to pray with you. We would love to encourage you. We would love to help comfort you. If you want to help build your community of other like-minded believers, head over to the Facebook group Cheer Up Podcast, and we do have fun over there. We are so, so grateful that you are here. If you love good fiction, head over to Kara Hunt's website, KARARHUNT.com, and pick up a copy of Paper Dolls. You will love it. She's in the middle of writing her next one in the series, and I've gotten a sneak preview because I'm one of her, I'm in the inner circle and I get to read them ahead of time. Trust me, you are going to love it. It's Kite's story, and it is so good, so good. If you want fiction or nonfiction, head over to my website, SherrySwalwell.com, CHERISWALWELL.com. If you need more than just once a week encouragement, but if you're looking for encouragement every day, I have a new membership called Jesus in the Everyday. Head over to my website, and on the homepage it will talk about it, and also on the page called Jesus in the Everyday. It will explain a little bit more of what you'll get every single day for your monthly membership. The price is the cost of less than $1 a day, less than a specialty drink a week, and you'll be filled up every single day. You'll receive short emails in your inbox every day, 365 days a year. I don't take breaks and vacations on Christmas or Easter or any other holiday. So it's just a way to help you focus and grow your relationship with God. If that sounds like something that you want to invest in, both with your time and your money, then head over there, check it out, and prayerfully consider if that's a group that you would like to join. We are so glad you're here. Next week, we're going to come back, and I'm going to tell about some of my favorites. And until then, I hope you're blessed. Go check out some of those great songs, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.